I had the greatest privilege of appointing another IIT Council chairperson, namely Tessie Thomas, who today heads the DRDO. The malaise that you speak of actually emanates from the private sector and autonomous institution. Let's be very specific. Every educational institution is autonomous in nature, which means that there is no legislative intervention for emancipation of women in leadership roles. Most of the education sector today in private hands also does not see female leadership, which means that the problem is not in the polity, but in the quality of people who fund these institutions or run these institutions. It needs to be said now that people who autonomously govern these academic institutions have been found wanting. So many a times as a politician, I'm asked this question and I wonder, does anybody who asks this question reflect on the fact that it is the private sector that has not lived up to its promise? Can you imagine we teach in our academic institutions issues like emancipation of women, equality, equal rights, equal opportunities, but none of them deemed it fit to have a female administrative leader? So who has failed? Your government hasn't, because like I said, you're speaking to one of the first ever female IIT chairpersons. I was there by the virtue of my legislative and executive position. I had the privilege of appointing Tessie, but again, Tessie was a part of the administrative systems. Yes, when I remember distinctly, I walked into the room which had all the IIT chairpersons and all the IIT directors. It had even scientists like Anil Kakodkar. And my question to Mr. Kakodkar was, where are the women? Mr. Kakodkar, a scientific person of great repute, looked at me and said, well, you're the female. Can you imagine? This is a scientist. This is a man who should have known better. And he said, you're here. Isn't that enough? I said, Mr. Kakodkar, I'm not here by the virtue of being a woman. I'm here by the virtue of being a cabinet minister. And I prodded and I asked, where are the women? And the response I got from the same scientist was, we couldn't find somebody good enough to be in the same room as us. And that is when I walked out and I called Tessie Thomas. I still remember when I called Tessie Thomas and I was there at one of the IITs and I said, Tessie, would you please accept this proposal by me? She literally, and I could feel it on the phone, had tears. And I said, why the silence, Tessie? She said, nobody ever thought of me. And this is a woman who is an integral part of the Indian missile program. So why men of science could not recognize the caliber of women of science is a question you need to ask those men.
Well said, ma'am. So the way we structured, we would have 2-3 questions each, and then we'll go to the audience. So I'm going to my second question. Again, this is on the work that I do as a director of the incubation at Savitribai Phule, Pune University. So my question here is that we're talking about the financial inclusion of women at a lot of places. And if we look at the startup ecosystem, there's been hardly an investment that has come to women founders, which is just about 1.53% nationally. And if we look at the number of unicorns that have been created, there's only out of the 100 unicorns, there are barely about 2 women unicorns. On the other hand, we have a lot of women.
So I'm taking an exception. A business is never gendered.
Okay.
An investor cannot be told invest in a business because it is led by a woman. Because being a woman is not a disease that needs help. For a female to walk in and to have an equal opportunity so that she says what she offers as a business opportunity is competitive, or the product is unique, or she is a disruptor in the market, and then being denied credit is an issue of much deliberation and an issue that needs to be highlighted. But when we sit together and we say, oh, female unicorn, we do a great injustice to women who are competent. Let us discuss why women who are equally competent are not receiving support from VCs. And why is that? Because it is okay for men to fail and not women. But the more we say female unicorn को मदद होनी चाहिए, female startup को मदद होनी चाहिए, you create a prejudice within the market yourself.
Sure.
You create a prejudice stating that the product or the company I have an offer needs to be camouflaged in my gender, which is not the case. Dada Patil is quietly sitting at a corner. He has spent 40 years in politics. I have spent 22 years. Dada Patil could have equally lamented, Smriti became a cabinet minister, and I haven't. Which he doesn't. Why? Because when I went to fight Amethi, my party did not say we are sending a woman to fight a man. My party said we are sending the toughest candidate the Yuvraj can find.
Wow.
So when we talk about credit for female enterprise, we need to understand it can be female-led enterprise, but the enterprise itself has to be strong enough to draw that kind of credit support. Yes, if you look at the dispensation in the private sector, organizations that are helmed by women who are starting on issues which may be looked upon as disruptions do not get as much support as, let's say, men-led entrepreneurs. Yes, there are many female enterprises and female-led enterprises where women take a decision to ensure that in engagements with financial institutions, they'll have a male partner sitting on the table and negotiating. That conversation is different from saying, why don't we have female unicorns?
Ma'am.
And I think, I'm sorry, I'm adding this. There has to be a recognition that the SME segment has seen a huge flood by the smallest of enterprises that are owned by women. What this room needs to decidedly act upon is the transition of women from the SME flooded segment to mid-sized companies and mid-sized companies to becoming then large corporations. Till such time we do not have a defined pathway, we will just end up in an echo chamber of angst. So if this is a forum which is starting today, can we look out for all those enterprises that are dominantly owned by women that have capacity to be mid-sized companies? Let's begin from there. If you can find those 2 to 3 examples and help them transition, because the transition or the success will not be overnight. The success is not guaranteed, not for a man or for a woman. So this is a transitional phase that we're a part of. And why do I say this? And I'm apologetic that I'm elaborating on this issue. In 2013, when we spoke about female-led enterprises, we lamented, and policymaker after policymaker spoke about how there was a lack of credit or access to capital. That women were reduced to dipping into their own finances and had a huge familial societal struggle to find large amounts of capital for them to start businesses. They were possibly endowed if they were a part of a capital structure within a family to say, ठीक है, थोड़े CSR से आप कुछ कर लीजिए. That is the condition that we spoke of in 2013. When Mudra Yojana came, it was not gender inclined. The Prime Minister did not say this is a fund for women. He said this is a fund for small enterprise. Today, what we celebrate is that 70% of that fund has been taken by women. I remember a conversation where people said, हाँ वो बेचारी आचार पापड़ बना रही है, छोटा छोटा कर रही है, उसमें फंड मुद्रा का गया. पार्लर का काम करना है. Then came Stand Up India, where the credit was enhanced from 10 lakh rupees to 1 crore rupees. Today, as a woman, I'm extremely proud that out of the Stand Up India fund distribution, 80% beneficiaries are women. Which means they are no longer happy with that 50,000, 10 lakh credit. They are going straight up to the capital need of 1 crore. So, who are those beneficiaries of Stand Up India, let's say in Pune? Can we identify them? Because obviously a financial institution has seen their business plans and has allowed that financial institution to support them with capital and credit. So what is that gap that needs to be addressed in their transition from an SME or an MSME to a mid-sized company? If we help even 2 such women, then you're looking at the next unicorn revolution that you're hoping women to be a part of.
Absolutely.
But one of the problems, again, that is plaguing the female fraternity is that most of the unicorns are tech-enabled. We are now in a process where we are teaching more and more women to be digitally literate. But the monies are in owning the technology. And historical evidence has shown wherever technology is to be consumed, you see women. Wherever you see technology has to be coded or owned, you see men taking over because the monies become larger. So if we are looking at more female participation in the unicorn universe, you need to then start initiatives which are targeted at ownership of technology by women. An amalgamation of both.
Fantastic, madam. That was a great take for us from how women could really get into the technology space and take up the unicorn position. And I hope there are a few like the Lizzie Chapmans of the world who was here to do that.
Why?
You know? I mean,
why do I need a Lizzie Chapman? I have enough women in my country.
In the country, yeah, right.
That is, I'm apologetic, but that's another problem. When we speak about women who are technologically enabled or who are a force in terms of disruption, why would I always need a Western name? I'm sure you'll find ladies here who've done much more.
Yeah, there is a name. That's what I mentioned to you, that Aditi is
So
there.
I don't need a Lizzie Chapman. I just this afternoon at 2:30 was with a mother-daughter pair that have started an instructional e-platform for creative education.
Absolutely.
The mother is widowed. The daughter wanted to do something different. They've come together, they've done it, and the entire IT talent is from Pune. So I don't need a Lizzie Chapman when I have talent in Pune. Recognize that talent is what is needed today.
Exactly. That is going to be one of our next point as well.
Yeah. So last point that I wanted you to ponder upon, if that's possible.
Can somebody get Anjali Tai Deshmukh a chair? Okay.
Okay. I just, a quick one, just wanted to understand your opinion on the policy making framework and the role of women in policy making framework today and in future for India, if you could.
Can you be precise?
So we have bureaucrats as women, we have ministers as women.
Why are you presuming that a man cannot create policy for women
we just
or
saying
women do not create policy for men?
No, the only point is the perspective
No,
of women.
perspective is what I'm talking about. Let me give you a small example. And I tell you why I take an exception to this as well. Have you ever seen a man being interviewed and being asked by other men, what do you think policy will do for other men if only men sat down and did policy? It's never happened. We always do this for female politicians. How can we have more female bureaucrats who can do policy for females? Or what can be the role for females in policy making and leadership? Why I'm saying this is that we've all had a female prime minister. But in our country, the menstrual hygiene protocol, administrative leave, was brought by Prime Minister Modi. Now you can imagine there would have been a gender intent that the female prime minister should have gotten a menstrual hygiene protocol and policy. She didn't. A man did. We had a female prime minister, but sanitary pad was never available at $1. We had a female Prime Minister, but she never spoke from the ramparts of the Red Fort about ensuring that menstrual hygiene products need to be affordable for women. We had a female Prime Minister, but medical termination of pregnancy at 24 weeks was done by a male Prime Minister, Modi. We had a female Prime Minister, but 26 weeks of maternity leave was done by the man who is Prime Minister now.
मैम ग्रेट वट एवर यू जस्ट सेड बट वहाँ सब जगह एक्सेप्शंस होते हैं और हम ये मानते हैं कि मोदी जी एक्सेप्शन है ऑफ कोर्स है इसीलिए उनको दोबारा
मैं इसलिए ये विषय आपके ध्यान में ला रही हूँ क्योंकि महिला बाल विकास मंत्रालय अपेक्षा होती है हमेशा औरत ही होगी मंत्री। मेरे स्टेट मिनिस्टर एक पुरुष हैं, which means that the interest of women have to be served by men also. So I expect a male bureaucrat, not only in this department, but in every department, to always have their gender lens on. If I start saying, oh, the women who are in administrative service can look at women's issues, or male politicians cannot look at female issues, I do a great disservice to the gender in my country. Then I actually will be blamed of reverse prejudice. And women, we know what prejudice feels like. We can't be the proponents of it.